Hello, History and Heritage Explorers. In this next series of videos, we're going to be exploring some of the historic sites of the American Civil War. So please sit back and enjoy. Hello, History and Heritage Explorers. Right now we are at the site of John Brown's Fort here in Harpers Ferry. Even though the fort is not standing here anymore, it is right back there. So let's learn more about John Brown, his raid here at Harpers Ferry, and why he came to this location. Nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains on a strip of land at the junction of the Shenandoah and Potomac rivers lies the picturesque town of Harpers Ferry. The town was founded by Robert Harper in 1734 when he settled in the area and ran a ferry service across the Potomac River. President George Washington selected Harpers Ferry in 1796 to be the site for a federal armory because of its location and access to the water power needed to run the mills required for the manufacturing of rifles. With the arrival of the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad in the 1830s, as well as the construction of the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal, the town soon became a major commercial hub. In 1859, Harpers Ferry became the setting for a daring but failed raid that some considered the first shots of the U.S. Civil War. Born on May 9, 1800, John Brown was a militant abolitionist who believed that slavery was a horrible crime against God and man, and that he should use any means necessary to end it, including violence. In May of 1856, at Pottawatta Creek, Kansas, he and his sons killed 5 settlers who were for the legalization of slavery. The years of 1854 through 1851 saw pro- and anti-slavery settlers clash in violent attacks in an era that would become forever known as Bleeding Kansas. In the spring of 1858, Brown convened a meeting of black and white supporters in Ontario, Canada, where he had announced his intentions of establishing a safe place in the Maryland and Virginia mountains for escaping slaves, as well as a base of operations for launching attacks on pro-slavery civilians. Brown received moral and financial support from several prominent Boston abolitionist ministers. Soon, Brown would begin to plan and attempt his most famous and last undertaking, the raid on the Harpers Ferry Arsenal. John Brown's Harpers Ferry raid, also known as the Harpers Ferry Insurrection, was a pivotal event in American history that took place in October of 1859. Led by abolitionist John Brown, the raid's goal was to seize the U.S. arsenal at Harpers Ferry, Virginia, now West Virginia, and to incite a slave rebellion and ultimately end slavery in the United States. This incident not only highlighted tensions between the North and the South, but it also played a significant role in the lead-up to the U.S. Civil War. Brown, a fervent abolitionist with strong religious convictions, believed that an armed insurrection was necessary to bring an end to slavery. In his view, slaves should rise up against their owners, and sympathetic abolitionists from the North should offer their support. He saw Harpers Ferry as the ideal location to carry out this mission due to its strategic position and proximity to the anti-slavery states of Pennsylvania and Ohio. John Brown and his followers set up their headquarters in a rented farmhouse in Maryland across the Potomac from Harpers Ferry. Here they finalized their plans and stocked up on the weapons and supplies needed. Brown thought and relied on local area slaves hearing of his raid and escaping their farms and plantations to join his rebellion and forming an army of the emancipated. Their goal was to arm the slaves and lead a revolt that would spread throughout the South, but in the end, none of the slaves would come. On the night of October 16, 21 men in total, 16 white men including John Brown and 3 of his sons, 3 freed black men, 1 freed person, and 1 fugitive slave, slipped across the Potomac into Harpers Ferry under the cover of darkness. They cut the town's telegraph lines, quickly took over the armory and both bridges. In addition, these raiders rounded up some 60 leading men in the area as hostages. A little after 1 in the morning, a Baltimore and Ohio passenger train was stopped by the raiders at the bridge. Hayward Shepard, a freed African-American and railroad employee, was shot and mortally wounded by John Brown's men when he went to investigate the train's delay. Soon, however, local militia and townsfolk killed several of the raiders and had John Brown surrounded in a small fire engine house that is known today as John Brown's Fort. Cutting holes in the heavy doors to create gun ports to fire from, Brown and his men held out throughout the day and into the night. Late in the evening on October 17th, Colonel Robert E. Lee and 90 U.S. Marines arrived by train from Washington, D.C. in response to this situation. Brown and his men were outnumbered and surrounded. Early in the morning on October the 18th, John Brown's son Oliver dies in an exchange of gunfire when John Brown refused to surrender to Lieutenant Jeb Stuart. A Marine storming party was formed, and using ladders as battering rams, they were able to break into the fire engine house. Lieutenant Israel Green crawled through the opening in the door, along with several other Marines, and finds himself face to face with John Brown, and lunges at him with his sword in hand, stabbing at him. Looking down at his sword, Green finds that it had been bent, most likely from striking the belt buckle of John Brown, so he proceeds to beat him with his sword. 1 Marine is killed, another wounded, and the remaining hostages are now safe. In total, 16 people were killed in the raid, including 10 of John Brown's men. Brown surrendered to the overwhelming force, and he, along with 6 others, were arrested. Watson Brown, one of John Brown's sons, was captured as well, but he died the next day from wounds that he had received on the 17th. Faced with charges of murder, conspiracy with enslaved people to rebel, and treason against the state of Virginia, John Brown's trial began on October the 27th and lasted just 5 days. Jurors took only 45 minutes to reach a decision, guilty on all charges. On November the 2nd, John Brown was sentenced to hang. Brown was executed on December the 2nd, 1859. On his way to the gallows, Brown handed a piece of paper with his final statement to his jailer, a man named Avis, whom he had considered a kind man for his treatment towards him and his men. I, John Brown, am now quite certain that the crimes of this guilty land will never be purged away but with blood. I had, as I now think, vainly flattered myself that without very much bloodshed it might be done. All 6 of Brown's captured men were tried and hanged as well. Brown's wife Mary took his body home to North Elba, New York, for burial on their family farm. The Harpers Ferry raid had a profound impact on the nation and the political landscape as well. It heightened tensions, further polarizing the nation along pro-slavery and anti-slavery lines. It deepened the divides between the North and the South, with Southern states viewing Brown's action as evidence of Northern aggression against their way of life, while many in the North, on the other hand, viewed Brown as a martyr and his efforts a necessary and justifiable means to end slavery. Brown's actions, which were referred to as terrorism by some and heroism by others, brought to question the morality of slavery to the forefront of the public discourse. John Brown's Harpers Ferry raid was a pivotal event that set the stage for the growing hostilities between the North and the South that would eventually lead to the American Civil War. While Brown's raid did not achieve its immediate objectives, it served as a catalyst in the fight against slavery and is seen as a crucial moment in American history. If you would like to learn more about John Brown or his raid on Harpers Ferry, head down to your school or local library or check in the description box for the Harpers Ferry National Historic Park website. As always, thank you from the History and Heritage Explorers, and until next time, keep on exploring.